Good evening, everybody.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello,
Good
Anthony.
evening.
Richard. Good
Hello,
evening.
Rich. Hello, Richard. Hello.
Hello.
Evening all.
Hi to everybody.
Good evening from Cairo.
Hi, Tanya.
How are you, Rich?
Good in yourself.
We're also well, thank you.
Great, thank
We had
you.
a great 2 weeks in South Africa. So
And we missed you.
Yeah, we missed you, but we fired up and ready for the Middle East again.
And we saw that your brother said he's the better looking one.
Sorry, what was that?
Your brother said he's the better looking one of the two.
Yeah, well, that's it. You know, it's give credit where it's due. Now, the wives might differ, but that's about all. Hello, Charles.
Goeienaand. Baie geluk, Christian.
Goeienaand, Shaw.
Dankie, Charles.
Naand ook, Anthony. Ek sien jy het dit daarom gemaak.
Nou kyk, wie sê ek 'n mooi vlei woorde vir my.
Hallo, Shaw. Gaan dit goed?
Goed, dankie en jy, Johan.
Baie lekker in die Kaap. Dankie. Lekker koud vanaand.
Ja, I'm going to switch to English. You're using two words that doesn't belong in one sentence. Lekker in the Kaap. It doesn't work.
Jy is net jaloers.
We will educate him one day, guys. Don't worry. We'll educate him.
It's lekker in Gauteng, but Cape I don't know so lekker about.
Jealousy makes you fat.
Well, then I'm slim.
Wag tot die regte Kaapie vir jou sê lekker in die Kaap, dan sou jy altyd lekker wees daar in die Kaap.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Leon, is jy graag af?
Christian, kan jy my hoor?
Yes, ek kan. Ek kan jou ook hoor.
Yes, way too many Chris's on site here. There's 2 Christians. He's Chris. Yo, guys. Ek raak sommer confused.
Daar sy nou. Ons krag was af, maar ons is nou weer reg. We had a power failure, but it's all going now. Cor, hoe was die golf?
I should also not give my opinion about golf. That will probably keep us together longer.
You know what they say? Golf is the game that is the closest to life. Sometimes you get good breaks and sometimes you get bad breaks. However, you have to play the ball as it lies.
You see, I just prefer to play the game of life. Less balls involved.
But even in life, Charles, there's good and bad breaks.
No, it's either going good or it's busy going good. That's the only 2 options you have in life.
Give that man a belt.
Thank you. I'll take it and probably give it to Anthony. Rich, if you're ready, I think it's time for us to start.
Okay, great.
You just need to unmute yourself. It works better that way.
Sorry, yes, there we are. I'm unmuted now. Okay, there's no boxes of crowns or anything like that on the screen, hopefully, tonight. So let me go full screen here. Right. Good evening and welcome to the MyWealth Formula of Success Mastery. Just to summarize our journey again, as we normally do, remember that you are the success and there's a process or journey to experience that success, and you must conquer both the money world and the relationship world. So far, our formula of success, it looks like this. There was the process of change, the 2 systems, time, and then success being about you, the identity, the passion, and the plan. And that is to the power of your vitality and self-leadership and your reason why, multiplied by education, skill, and activation. And you just repeat that. So what are we going to be looking into tonight? And that is the relationship side of the actual formula. And just remember that success is all of the following things: hard work, persistence, late nights, rejection, sacrifice, discipline, criticism, doubts, failure, and risk. Now, one of the big things that when it comes to relationships and our success is the fear of rejection, or actually being rejected and working through those rejections, because that's really why many of our relationships fail, because we fear rejection. However, rejection is not someone wanting you out of their life. It's rejection is often someone that God wanted out of your future. So just remember that. You know, there's a reason people reject you. Now, in relationships, there are 7 relationships. The first 2 being with God and yourself. And the important thing to remember about these 2 relationships is that what you believe about the identity of yourself will have a huge influence on the rest of your life and the rest of yourself. Right, so the greatest trap in our life is not success, popularity, or power, but self-rejection. So when we talk worried about other people rejecting us, first we need to understand that we often reject ourselves, and we disqualify ourselves because of the many factors that we've looked at so far. And one of those things are belief, or the culture, or the character that we have so far. So most of the first 2 relationships, the relationship we have with God and ourselves, deals with the fact that we need to accept ourselves for who we are, be happy with who we are, and then be able to move on and avoid that self-rejection. The next 4 relationships in the 7 are spouse, family, extended family, and friends. And these are often the ones that give us the most challenges in our in building relationships, but they're also some of the most rewarding. I wouldn't say that the relationship with God is not rewarding, but we sort of can build that relationship and work it at our own time, whereas family and friend relationships, kind of like there's a little bit of pressure involved when we build these type of relationships. Now, personal relationships are the fertile soil from which all advancement, all success, all achievement in real life grows. So it's important that we have these personal relationships so that we can grow and we have a point to grow from. But these relationships, we know that they either support us or they are destructive relationships. And we need to be very careful about how we keep these relationships and how we manage these relationships, because they either support us and help us become more successful, or they detract from us being successful. And, you'll know people, and I know family members and people very close to me, where if their spouse supports them, they've become extremely successful. But when their spouse, for instance, doesn't support them, is forever bringing them down, criticizing them, that sort of thing, they never achieve the level of success, or it takes them a long time, because first they've got to deal with that rejection or that pressure that comes from these type of relationships. So just remember that, choose your friends and family quite carefully. And when I mean that is that you need to sometimes distance yourself from people that are negative. We can lose our friends, but we can't necessarily lose our family, but we can distance ourselves from them. And that's certainly, if you look at successful people, they've often needed to distance themselves from family. I just think of an example of a friend of mine who here is in the business, and he's from Italy. And he was saying that where he comes from, he can't go back to his family town, because when he goes back to that town, everyone expects him to receive a gift. And he says it's impossible. it costs him too much money. So what happens is eventually you just cut yourself from that family. You sort of keep a distance and you don't go back there, because all it does is actually brings you down. And, you know, if you think about the gift that the family is expecting and the gift that you are able to give someone, often those two don't line up, because the gift they want, and, you know, if you look at the man, you know, the person that you teach how to fish, you want to give them the gift of the ability to accumulate success and wealth, and all they actually want is a fish. So that is where the relationships really become a challenge, and you've got to use your wisdom when working in these type of relationships. So always remember that, you know, don't know what you want and work for what you want and what you want to do in people's lives. Don't let them dictate to you what they think you should be doing. Then if we're honest with ourselves, we think we know more. Or let's say if we're not honest with ourselves, we think we know more and we need to learn less. This causes us to assume that we are in a good position to impart our opinions and knowledge on others. Be very careful about how you express your opinion, because this is the main reason why our relationship doesn't work. Because instead of us building and nurturing relationships, we seem to think that we are able to give someone something. And as of this business, we do believe we have a fantastic business, you know, to offer to people an investment and whatever we'd like to call it. It's fantastic, but be careful on how you position yourself when you build in a relationship, because often we build relationships in the wrong way. And let's hope we can understand that better by the end of the session. John Maxwell says, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And always remember this. If you were looking at, let's say, for instance, you wanted to tell someone about this, MyWealth, okay? Isn't it better for you to find someone that you can learn from, as opposed to finding someone you can teach? Now, think about that in a relationship context. If I'm looking at you as a person I can learn from, then we have a reason for a relationship. There's something we can build on. There's a purpose in our relationship. And often relationships need a purpose. If I assume I have got something for you and I'm going to give that to you, or I'm going to teach that to you, and you're not prepared or you're not interested in what I'm going to give you, there is no relationship. So find a reason for the relationship. And the easiest way is to find the person who can teach you something, as opposed to you thinking you can teach someone something. Because, you know, and you can look at that in the way that we interact with teenagers. We think we have the solution. We think we have the answers for the teenagers. We know what they shouldn't be doing, but do we take the time to understand why they do what they do? And that is the key to relationship. It's about the communication, and it's about understanding and building a relationship on something that becomes valuable. Not something that you think is valuable. The lines are, they're not so clear as we think that they are. We start to think about it. And the whole process of this success mastery is to change our thinking and to think in new ways about things. Now, the last part of the relationships are the money. The seventh relationship is your relationship with money, which could be looked at as the relationship you have with your boss, or particularly in this case, the relationship you have with MyWealth. What is your relationship with money? How do you see money? And then at the same time, how's your relationship with your boss if you're still working and you do have a boss? Because those two are very closely linked. And that then spills over into the way we think of MyWealth and what we have in MyWealth. Because if you want to build this business, or you want to build your legacy, your wealth legacy, you need to understand what this is doing for you. What is the relationship you have with money and with MyWealth? Those are the things you need to contemplate. And I know there's many of you that are writing down things and on a weekly basis. And last week you had the fantastic opportunity to not attend a session, but purely reflect and probably write lots of things in your book. So this is one of the things we should be thinking about. What is our relationship with money? What is our past relationship with money? How did we think about money? And how do we think about money now? And how are we going to think about money in the future? The same as, what did we think of MyWealth when we started? What do we think of MyWealth now? And how is our thinking about the future of our journey with MyWealth going? And if you take note of those things, you'll notice that probably from every 6 months, you will have a different view of what the whole relationship you have with money and MyWealth, how it's changed in 6 months. So, I really encourage you to write down your thoughts at the moment and then compare them in 6 months' time. We have a very interesting little exercise we take people on here in Italy. We take them to Lake Como, we put them on a boat, we send them around the lake so that they can see everyone and where all the rich and where George Clooney and all those sort of people live. And it's amazing. The first time they go there, they're awestruck. They don't know what to think. It's almost like it's impossible. The second and third time they go on that cruise, let's say that's 6 or 7 months later, suddenly they start to see different opportunities and they start to see different possibilities in their own life. And that's why I encourage you to write down things so that you can see over time how your thinking has changed from that original time, whatever your relationship is with money now and whatever it is with MyWealth. Write it down so that you can see how you evolve and how you actually grow. Money is an amazing litmus paper, if you might put it that way. Right, so money is really all about discipline and self-discipline. And Robert Kiyosaki puts it so well. He says self-discipline is the number one delineating factor between the rich, the middle class, and the poor. And big words, incidentally, are the things that confuse us the most. So that's why I particularly looked at that and I thought, why do people put big words in? It's often to impress people. And then I looked at it and I thought, well, hopefully it's easier in Afrikaans. Maybe there's a better description in Afrikaans. And unfortunately, it turned out to be a groot woord ook. So sometimes these words that people use are really just to confuse you more than anything else. And the main thing that if you have to simplify that, it's basically a boundary. It's the boundary between the rich, the middle class, and the poor. That's self-discipline. And in Afrikaans, it's a grens. So just to give you that sort of information, but there we are, self-discipline, so important. And when you look at the way you think, it's all about your self-discipline. And that's why I encourage you to write things down so that you can actually see how your own self-discipline around certain things have changed as you grow in your own process. Right, so success is all about you, as we've always said. Remember that you will need emotional stability to achieve success. And you can put it in this way, that you can only learn to swim within water and you can only learn to handle emotions within relationships. And, if you think about the whole rejection that I brought about earlier, the reason why we don't have the relationships we want is the fear of rejection. So learn how to deal with rejection so that you can build the relationships that you want. Rejection is not the other person rejecting you. It's simply they're often rejecting themselves from their own point of, their lack of self-esteem, etc. You will, if they see you as being a more successful person than they are, and whatever that means, they often reject you. So that's why it's a lot easier to work with people that are already successful or have emotional stability, and look for that when you're building relationships. Otherwise, you've got to be the psychologist, and typically when you get into a relationship where you need to be the magic in that relationship, it's a very short-lived relationship, because you just fix the relationship. And once you fix the relationship, that is the end and the purpose of the relationship. So try and find the relationships that you want to build. Look for people that are already emotionally stable, instead of you having to help them all the time. You don't have to be the fixer of every situation. The only support structures that really work, especially in the long run, are those with the relational infrastructure. So the purpose needs to be a little bit more long-term when you're looking at a relationship. So find something, and that's why it's good if we can learn from each other. It's much better than it being a one-sided relationship where you are fixing or teaching the other person. Those relationships typically don't last very long. And remember, we all need support every day in our lives, and therefore we need decent relationships with family and friends to start them on the right foot. There's one thing on the road to success that is very clear, is that you need to learn how to connect and work with people. It's all about communication. If we look at relationships, it becomes actually very simple. It comes down to how do we communicate, okay? And remember that you are in control of every relationship that you have. So it's your attitude, the way you communicate, that actually determines the success of that relationship. The better you communicate, the better every relationship in your life is going to be. When you expect other people to communicate with you, okay, that's when you're actually lacking self-discipline. You need to make sure that you are doing the communication. Now remember, the communication is not the talking, it's that you make sure that you are actively involved in the communication, that be the listening or the direction of the relationship. That is where people will respect you in your relationships, because you are actually controlling the relationship, not in a controlling way, but you are making sure that there's sufficient communication in that relationship for the communication to be or the relationship to be a success. Unfortunately, people are not an optional item on the road to success. They are the beginning and the end of the road, and there's no road of success where with no people on this road. They are the road. So, get good at building relationships, get good at communicating in your relationships, and your road to success will have a lot less potholes and bumps in it. Now, just looking at the relationship factors, I know this evening there's quite a lot of information, so I do apologize for that. I just think that there's a whole lot of really valuable things that we can think about, and if I am going too fast, please watch the video, go over this again so that you can pick up what's important if you've missed it during this session. So these are the relationship factors. It's the worth, the value, innocence, and I'll explain that, equality, trust, and integrity. These are the factors that make relationships good. The first one is worth, and it all starts with you. If you cannot see value in your own life, how will you convince other people that it is profitable for them to have a relationship with you? That comes back to that self-discipline, the self-esteem, the self-worth that you see in yourself. Just like, if you want a friend, you must be a friend, and that's what this is about. So be a friend to someone, build a relationship, and when they see that there's value in that, they become a better friend and the relationship becomes stronger. Innocence, this is quite an interesting one. You need to stand up, you need to take responsibility for your life and pay for whatever you use. One of the most interesting things when it comes to success is those that look for a free lunch, a free ride, a free anything. The one that when you go out for drinks, he's the last one to pull out his wallet. Those people, unfortunately, will never be successful. And I think we mentioned it earlier in the series where the free books were available. Everyone's looking for a free book. No one wants to buy a book. Okay. Understand that that is a poverty mentality. And if you do want something valuable, you will need to pay for it. And I think that, you know, I must say that the MyWealth system is set up to force you into being a better person in relationships, because you realize that your poverty mentality will not get you anywhere and that you will need to step up to the plate. So, you know, another feather in the MyWealth cap there, making sure we stay out of this poverty mentality, thinking everything's going to be free on earth. Equality, very important. People will know when you look down at them or talk down to them. It's an attitude that flows from your heart. You cannot hide it. So, you know, when you look at the heart on the sleeve concept, well, when you're looking at other people, judging them, that sort of thing, they will know it immediately. So, you know, be very careful about how you think about other people, because that will definitely come out in the way that you react and interact with them. Trust, well, you know, I don't think I need to say a lot about trust. The person that you can trust can disappoint you. But you have the opportunity to forgive the person and restore trust in the relationship. Understand that people will hurt us in one way or the other, but we have the beautiful thing of being able to forgive people. And that either builds or breaks down the trust. And these are the things that really come to challenge us in relationships. When it comes to a two-way relationship, trust is the most important thing. And when it comes to our own relationship with ourselves, integrity is the most important, because integrity is the things you do when no one else is looking. And this requires that inner sense of wholeness in your character. So integrity, you test that for yourself. Trust is tested with other people. There's another relationship factor that I didn't mention earlier, but the role of family. And that is, we are far too focused on the outward things that are necessary for success. We need to neglect, and when we neglect the inward dimension of identity, and we neglect the inward dimension of identity and value reproduction. So we've got to remember that our success depends on people. Our interactions with people, the way our families see us, and the things we do in our lives often impact our families. And don't be so focused on everything outside or the trimmings of success. You know, yes, the children would like to go to Disneyland often, but they'd actually like to see you as the father a lot more often, because Disneyland's a once-off occasion for many of us. But seeing your father more regularly is an important factor. So, you know, sort of weigh that up. Right, so here's our formula of success so far. We've now added that relationships are really to the power of integrity. And that's what we've got so far in our formula of success. You'll notice that as we move along, when we're on the 7th week now, in the next 3 weeks, we become a little bit more practical. We look at how we're going to implement these things. And that's the relationships was really the first part of that implementation process. Because if we do want to measure our success, it's often measured by the strength of our relationships. All right, so thank you for that. And in summary, there was what you got tonight. Perhaps we can talk about what was the most important point that came across to you, what you learned, and how we're going to do things in the future. So thanks very much. I will end the sharing for the moment, and we can have a discussion. Thanks for your time so far.
Thank you, Rich. I just want to say that was very good. Appreciate that. And there's a lot of, well, they say thought for food or food for thought, whatever way around, that one. And I think we've said it before. I'm just going to say it again. And if we do, please forgive me. Guys, it's all about relationships. Scott, are you on the call? Let's see if he's on here. No, he's not. He was booked out for the week. Some hoho got their family down, but they're over the worst. But something that me and Skalk has discussed quite a lot is how do you really impact the world? How do you really change lives? How do you really leave a legacy? Because the reality is a building is not going to leave a legacy. But they will soon forget who built the building. If in the only real way for you to have a purpose-driven life is to do it through relationships. And as Richard said, yes, the kids want to go to Disney World, they do it once, but being there in the evenings or in the mornings or whenever the family needs you, that's going to determine your value to your children. It's the time spent through relationship, not necessarily taking them to fancy places. So yeah, thank you, Rich, for just providing a couple of frameworks for which we can look at our relationships and focus on them. And then obviously with our relationship towards God, we from that position of fullness, we can then work with the people around us who might, let's just call it, being less perfect than ourselves. But then they can accept you who are also a bit less perfect than you think. But if we can approach one another in love, and with common vision, life is becoming fun. So yeah, that's my take. Over to you.
Thanks, Shaw.
Rich, can I shoot? There's one few things you said that really that grabbed my attention. The first thing was, if I think I can learn from you, then we are ready for a relationship. That to me was absolutely profound. Because when we have a teachable spirit and we think that someone else can teach us and we can learn from them, that's where that journey of the relationship starts. Which means inherently you actually have to have a sense of humility to say, hold on, I can learn from you. I don't think that we're ever too old to learn. And I think that is the point of departure of deepening that sense of relationship because of the willingness to learn from somebody else. So I'd like to encourage myself to continue with that attitude in terms of a success mastery in my mind of always being willing to say, hold on. I've learned lessons from the domestic in our kitchen. Why? I'm looking for ways that I can improve to the next level. And sometimes they just have a little domino that it goes click and you go, wow. But if you're not looking for those moments, they may just pass us by. Because the next thing that you said, it takes discipline. And I think a relationship calls for discipline. It definitely calls you and I to say, if we, like Robbie Kiyosaki said there, if we can realize that self-discipline is what makes the difference in terms of really taking you to the next level. And I really believe that when you connect that with, when you're linked on communication, it is active involvement. Here's the truth. I think the cell phone has made us pathetic. We actually pretend to be listening to people, pretend that we are engaging with them. And because the law of connection that you spoke about earlier on, there's no connect because we actually have got divided attention and truly not communicating effectively. Are we communicating? Yes, seemingly. But we are missing out on the relationship and the cost of that relationship because the content of the cell phone is more important than the person in front of us. That's just my take.
Absolutely. Yeah, it came from the concept of, we have low-hanging fruit. We all know the low-hanging fruit concept. But we typically, because we are so used to this new instant way of life, everything in our lives is low-hanging fruit.
True.
We never look for the prize. We just go for the initial fruit. And if we start to look at our relationships and say, instead of me just picking the low-hanging fruit, I want a good relationship with my friends, with my family. Who's going to teach me something? Because it's the humility that often brings us closer together. So, because we think we know everything, so we don't humble ourselves into the relationship. And that's really what's important in relationships, is to bring ourselves to a point that we allow the other person to be who they are. Otherwise, we find that we are maybe too strong for the relationship. And I think that's what we've got to guard against, is that if we go in for low-hanging fruit, we'll find people that are weaker than us that we can influence. Whereas we actually got to do it the other way around, and we'll have much stronger relationships because we've humiliated ourselves and said, we've become vulnerable. And I think that's important. We must become vulnerable in our relationships to see what we can actually learn, as opposed to what we can give the relationship.
True. Rich, I think that latches onto what Unita de Vries said in the talk there on the side, which she says, if we can admit to ourselves that we need people, that we need relationships, we actually are qualifying sort of in that first step to take it to the next level. So, Unita, I would like to hear your voice and hear more about what you're saying, because I believe that you are on point, that if the moment we can say we need relationships, it sets us up for that success to build on that.
Hi. I don't know if you guys can hear me.
You can.
Thank you, Rich. Great. I think relationships are very important, because if we can't have relationships with people, then we really don't have a life. And relationships influence every aspect of our lives. And one of the ways, or one of the tools that I use, sometimes with success and sometimes not, but more often with success, is that no matter who I come across, whether I like them or not, whether they irritate me or not, whether they are a part of my life for 5 seconds or for 5 minutes or 5 months, it doesn't matter the length of time. On the very first meeting, when I meet someone, I try and remind myself to look at how the Father stands in them, because our relationship with the Father teaches us who He is and who we are. But we have to acknowledge the truth of He is in everyone. He's made all of us. And so if I can look at someone and say, how does the Father stand in you? Then it opens up relationship. It allows me to say to myself, I want to learn from you, because there is an aspect of the Father in you that is not in me. It's not evident in me. And so I can learn from you. I can receive from you the richness of the character of God that He has put in you. And that's humbling, because the Father is there is so many aspects to Him. Even when it is somebody who potentially, let me explain. There is a young man that we know who has Asperger's. He is a social Asperger. And so he would not care about your personal space or your personal time or anything. He is in your face continually. My personality, I don't handle that very well. And I like my personal space. So he used to really irritate me. And then one day I said to one of our ministers, I said to him, can't you guys just tell him to just back off a bit, or keep him quiet, or somehow control him? And the minister said to me, isn't it marvelous how the Father stands in him? And that was like a bucket of cold water over me. I started to think about, how does the Father stand in this young man? And then I realized the Father stands in him by showing tenacity, by showing that the Father doesn't take rejection. he just carries on loving. He carries on reaching out. He never, ever gives up on you. And so that was the beginning of the journey of how does the Father stand in people? I look at my husband and I see how the Father stands in him. I look at the person who serves me at the local grocery store and I see how the Father stands in her. I look at Rich and I see how the Father stands in you, Rich. At my friend Yvonne, who lives across the road, I see how the Father stands in her. So that helps me to establish relationship. And it also helps me value myself more, and it helps me value the Father more. And yeah, that's my take on relationships. Thanks.
Thanks, Juanita. That was beautiful. I think from that perspective, it helps us to understand that everyone is valuable and that there's something to learn from everyone. So, coming back to my original statement, you just see the person and how the Father stands in that person, and you will be able to learn from them. So there's no need to try to pretend that you want to build a relationship, because if you see the Father in the person, you will want to build a relationship with that person.
Hi, Richard.
Yes, Leon.
What I would like to contribute is I try to live by the principle of the gift is in the giving. And in order to give, it means that you have already received. And a closed hand, a hand that is closed, can never receive. And that links to your example of what you mentioned. You get guys or women or people who will always be the last one to take out their wallets to pay for something. And I believe that is most likely because the hands are closed, that they cannot receive to share abundantly. And I was privileged to work with young children, athletes, and young rugby and cricket players. And what I realized there is that something that we all know is that a teachable player is a good player. You cannot teach and prune someone that is not prunable. And all of us on this call tonight, we are here to learn. And we are here by choice, because there are 103 and 70 things that gives us reason not to be here tonight. But we chose to be here because we are teachable. We believe in what we cannot see, but what is yet to come. And when the moment comes and arrives, we need to be ready to acknowledge and recognize it, to be the best you can be in that specific moment.
Absolutely. Thanks, Leon. Thank you. Jane, hi, we can hear you.
So somebody else came then. Yeah, I just wanted to say on relationships, whether it's business or personal, I think having some yin and yang within that is always very good, because yeah, it's good to have a lot of things in common where you agree, because then there's a harmony in there. But isn't it a wonderful thing to find that somebody challenges your thought process? And it's quite interesting when it's somebody you say you have a love relationship with, and they say something you think, oh gosh, but because you care about that person, you often take on board their opinion and their feelings. But do you do the same with somebody who you're not in a love relationship with? Because it doesn't matter as much, but then it makes you think about how you deal with other people. Think, well, if I can open up my own mind and my opinion to somebody I love and care about, I should do it to other people. And I think they actually then help you grow in that way, because you start to think, well, yeah, other people have different opinions to me. And yeah, this can work. I can see how they do that. And I think that it can work within business and your sort of personal relationships as well. It keeps it fresh and gives you that challenge, rather than otherwise, if everybody just harmonized all the time, that your businesses would never move forwards, your personal relationships would be the same, you go to the same places, do the same things. But if somebody's into something different, they go, hey, let's do this. And you go, well, do you know what? I've never done that. So I'm going to go forwards and do that. And I do think that's how you grow, by opening yourself up and your mind to completely new concepts. That gives you the challenge.
Yeah. Jake, as people say, we should always do things in love. And we should look at our relationships in love as well, because it's very much like we go to work and our friend says to us, oh, you know, we ask them how are they, and they say, oh, I've got a bit of a sore back today. And the next day you see them, they've got a sore back. And then a week later, they've still got a sore back. And you go, oh, shame, I hope it gets better. And what we got to look at is say, well, if we were responsible in our relationship with people, and if we truly loved them, you know, and we were in love with that person, or if it was our child or something, we'd insist that they go to the doctor and get their back sorted out. But because we don't really care, or it's news, it's not anything that's going to build the relationship, because we haven't taken that opportunity, we just let it pass. And, you know, that's a very good example. So we need to look at our relationships in love and say, well, what are we actually doing in this relationship if we can't talk in that relationship? If we think this relationship has only got to be about harmony and we can never question the process. So that's a very good thing to, you know, we need to ask ourselves, the relationship that we have with anybody in our lives, are we finding an actual purpose? Are we having a meaningful relationship? And that means that we are learning from that person, they learning from us, and we holding each other accountable, and we love each other because we care about each other. And I think those are the things that we need to look for in our relationships. If we don't have those things present in a relationship, we don't really have much of a relationship, and it's not going to last long. So thank you for that. Grant, I see you there. Did you want to say something?
You sure put me on the spot, don't you, Rich?
Yeah.
I just got a nice, really lovely note from Dr. Anthony there, and I was responding and saying that my friends, who seem to be just like real friends, even off in the distance there in South Africa, just means so much. And so I appreciate everybody and the input and the great things to be learned here, and to be able to be a part. And I look so much for a good time to be able to get there and actually be there in person with everybody at some point. And I so much appreciate the lessons here. It's just means so much. So I thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. Thank you, Grant. It's good to hear from you.
They put me on the spot.
There you go. Oh, yeah, your friendly face appeared on the video. It's almost like I'm looking now at Herman, and he's been like nodding his head and responding. So I'm going to ask Herman to talk to us now.
So, hi Richard. Hi, thanks. Yeah, that was a surprise. I'm always a quiet one down here, but yeah, all good. Yeah, Richard. Yeah, every week's going past and we're learning new things. And one thing about relationships, it's interesting sometimes how you meet people that's coming into your life, and I've realized last year what can it mean for you to change someone else's life and change by just being there for them and helping them through their difficult time, and by seeing how their life has changed, you know, and by doing so, your life has changed also for the better. So that really opened my eyes, and just still having contact with them and just being for them, and just even if it's just sending that person a hi or message, how is his day, and just being in contact with that person. But yeah, that's just amazing what you can do for other people, and just by being for them, you know, we actually become friends through them, you know. So, but yeah, it's just amazing how you're building relationships, even if it's for work or wherever you are. The more you work on that relationship, the better that relationship will become. And you never know how you will meet other people through those same relationship that will open other doors for you. But yeah, it's an amazing journey we are going through here. So I enjoy every minute and every week session and learning new things every week. So yeah, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank you. Yeah, it's quite interesting. You know, you talk about these meeting people, and I remember once sitting in a coffee shop, and I was waiting to meet a business associate, and this lady came in, and she smiled at me, and I smiled at her, and I thought, well, maybe she's come for the meeting as well. You know, you never know who's coming to the meeting. So I sort of was friendly, and she sat down, and I automatically assumed that she must be coming with the guy, and she just arrived a bit earlier. And she said a few words to me, and I can't remember exactly what the words were. And then she said, thank you. And I go, okay, what you thanking me for? She says, I've learned something, and now I know why I had to meet you. And she says, bye-bye. And that was it. And never saw her again. And then a few minutes later, here came my meeting and carried on. And it just shows you that, you know, there's that saying about you meet people for a reason, a season, a moment. And that was really a moment meeting. And I can't even remember what I said to her. But we've got to be sort of open to the possibilities that happen around us. And maybe by just smiling at people, and we change them, and we can build a relationship, and it doesn't have to be a very long relationship. Obviously, we'd like long relationships, but remember, we don't always have time for 1,000 long relationships. So we might need 1,000 short relationships with the other 50 to 100 main relationships that we have. So, you know, always be open to possibilities. Who is wanting to share next? I see lots of friendly faces.
Let me jump in.
Okay, Christian.
I must be honest, this whole starting MyWealth and trying to get people challenged me completely. And now I must say, lately, talking to all my people that I knew from different walks of life, chatting to them again and salvaging those relationships really gave me lots of energy. And yeah, what I've gained from that, never mind the business, is already amazing. and it's something I won't say I've neglected, but you polish it off now on purpose, and that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I think what you said there was so important, Christian, that you said never mind the business. And I think if you approach relationships on that level, where you're just trying to build the relationship, you're not trying to build a business, they become so much more beneficial for you. And if it's business that happens, well, that's great, but it's about the relationships. It's not about the business. And they become so much more meaningful. So thank you for that.
Rich, I can just add to that what Christian just said about the relationships and the business. The road that lies ahead for each of us will always be about relationships, because people buy into you, and then the business will follow. That's why you get, coming from the financial industry where I used to be, you've got an Old Mutual and a Sanlam and a Discovery. And then you also got the smaller company, like a Charter Life. But yet in a Charter Life or any small company that I cannot recall now right now, but they're not competitive market value compared to the giants and the market leaders. Yet in those small companies, there are top achievers, people who believe in those advisors representing those smaller companies. And those top achievers earn much more money and are much more wealthier than the average of the advisors and the consultants in the big companies, because they've locked in those relationships, and the people buy into the value that they can add to their life. It's just a reality for me.
Thanks, Leon. Yeah. It's really important that. Ian, what are you thinking?
Rich, I'm enjoying the bird life there in the background.
That's the cuckoo, and it was quite amazing. We actually heard for the first time about 2 weeks ago a cuckoo in real life. You know, that's the clock. But we were fortunate enough to hear a cuckoo in the wild, and it's actually the mating call. That's what you hear in there. So it's all about relationships, you know. Ian, over to you.
I just want to add on to what Christian said, just relationships, and also what Herman said. Being at the summit, I recognize a whole lot of faces here, that wonderful people we met on the summit. And I've been communicating with Herman since about November last year on Telegram and WhatsApp, and we had the opportunity to see each other and meet each other and sort of build up a relationship. And it was just amazing. And as Christian mentioned, it's like a life-changing experience meeting all these wonderful people, and it's a journey ahead of us. And I agree, it's all about relationships, and once such a relationship is there, then the business is a byproduct of the relationship. So I just want to thank MyWealth for this wonderful opportunity. That's all I've got. Yeah. And I enjoyed the cuckoo clock. Yeah.
Good, thank you. I think one of the things that I want to mention, and it comes back to what Jane said about, the way we communicate and expressing our opinions and all those sort of things. Remember that we often expect people to do the things that we do. So let me use an example of the MyWealth system. And, as Charles mentioned on Monday night, a few people have a lot to say, a lot to criticize, and all those type of things. And, that's easy. But my challenge to you in relationship is that if you don't see something that you expect, so in other words, you might not see the communication that you expect, well, that gives you the opportunity to do the communication. It's expressing your opinion, expressing your love for the system. So if you think someone has not done what you thought they were supposed to do, well, that's God telling you what you are supposed to do. Why it comes back, and you've got to listen to this very carefully, because why were we given the spirit of judgment? Okay, you've got to ask yourself. The Bible says we mustn't judge. But we were given the spirit of judgment. So now you've got to play these two up and say that you were given the spirit of judgment so you can see the opportunity, because if you weren't given the spirit of judgment, you wouldn't be able to see the opportunity. And when it comes to what Juanita said and how unique we are, you were given that spirit of judgment. Other people might not judge it like you do. So when you are seeing something that's lacking or missing from a situation, that means that it's your opportunity to fill in that gap. So yeah, there's a nice little challenge for you. That is relationship. That is what it's about. Remember the self-discipline, remember the difference that you're going to make, and the difference that divides you from a person of poverty mentality to abundant mentality. It's because you can actually understand the opportunity that's given to you, the gap, the judgment that you were given, and you fill that instead of just being, like a typical politician who can only criticize, got no solutions. You were given that judgment by God to find a solution because you've now seen the opportunity and you can do it. So yeah, there we go. Thank you. Stephen, you got your hand up. Let's hear from you.
Good evening, everyone. I hear what you're saying, and I mean, I appreciate that, and I think it's very valid. But one thing that I've always found very, one that we've got to look at all the time is your own relationship with yourself. And if you don't have a strong relationship with yourself, you trust yourself or self-behavior, then your persona that you come across, may that be of a failure from the beginning, you know. So if you are not sure of yourself, not sure of what you're doing, then, you know, then the person that you're speaking to or building a relationship with picks up on that. And I'm a strong believer in it's not always what is said, it's sometimes what is seen is sometimes, and what people feel from you. So what some of the people have also mentioned there, I resonate with, you know, that, and what you're saying now is, you know, you've got to come across correctly, and your own relationship with yourself in the mirror. When you see yourself, you must, number one, accept yourself, forgive yourself for the past and things that you've done, and be at peace with yourself, and your heart is what you want to come out. And that's where I approach many things as well from my side. I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. That's very valuable. Thank you, Stephen. That's really appreciated. Thank you. Dino, it's almost looks like you want to say something.
Yeah, well, for me, the penny just dropped, and I think for me it was an aha moment, and I don't know if I'll do justice to it, but you know, I think if I look back, I learned that in any sort of transaction, there's always value that you're adding, and then I also learned that your wealth or your success is directly proportional to the value that you add. And so the more value that you can add, and the more value you can add to more people, then obviously your success grows. And then it sort of led me to, you know, when you mentioned about a relationship is about learning about others. And so I then understood that to add value, you actually need to learn what is valuable to the other person. And then taking that even a step further is it's the act of love that getting to understand how you can add value to a person's life translates to success and wealth. So I don't know if I managed to confuse you.
No, that was great. Thank you. And thank you very much. That's good. Thank you.
I want to add on to what Stephen also said, is that the self relationship is extremely important. But to get the self relationship right, you need to understand with who you have a relationship. And that gets back to your identity. And I'm just going to paraphrase it. Your identity is the most beloved son of God, or the most beloved daughter of God. And through so your relationship with yourself is actually a relationship with God, because that is where you are getting your identity from. That's where you're getting your purpose from. That's where you're getting your energy from, your passion from. And through that, you can then relate to other people, because they are also the most beloved sons and daughters of God. Like I'm God's favorite child. There's no child like me in the world. But so is Christian. Christian is is the favorite Christian of God. And if we realize that, then we can connect that with one another, or through one another. It opens up a whole new level. I want to call it of destiny, of purpose, of drive. The things God has unlocked the past week within MyWealth, you guys only know about it in a couple of months' time. But the things that was unlocked this week within MyWealth, it is scaring me. Okay, that's how big it is. And it is done through relationship and through recognizing one another's visions and passions and working together to unlock that purpose that has been put in a person's heart by God. And through that collaboration and honoring one another, understanding this is what I'm good at, this is what you are good at, this is what you are good at, but pulling together in unity and not trying to be the boss or trying to be the main peanut, but everybody accepting who they are, understanding we're pulling one direction and the purpose is kingdom. We can literally run a country. And that is only unlocked through relationship and honoring one another. I'm using the word honor, but it's more than that. It's respecting, there's integrity. There's a lot of things that works together here, but it's recognizing one another. And yeah, so but it starts with self. You need to have your own relationship right with God, with yourself, and from that position, you can then have healthy relationships from you to other people. Yeah, and that just opens a whole new dimension to success, to life, to friendships, to family. So yeah, that's just something that's again amazed me. How the simple things in life. It's not complicated business structures. It's not making money or doing this or that. It is getting back to the essence of who we are and helping one another unlock that.
I see Lizelle has been saying a lot of things in the chat. Lizelle, don't you want to share with us what your thinking is? It would be so nice.
And showing us your face. I always like looking at your face.
Hello, guys.
Hi, Lizelle.
Yes, unfortunately, I'm not showing my face. I recently had some eye surgery. So thank you for being kind to me tonight. Yeah, and I think the beauty of relationships, even as I experienced tonight, is that I can really, really feel that we care about each other. And I was just looking at the participants, and especially those who kind of stayed with us the past couple of weeks. And the amazing thing is that we learn so much from each other just by having these conversations. We don't even have to sit with each other face to face in one room, but through this conversation and sharing and openly, authentically sharing, we get a feeling of the other person, even though it's on a screen. We can sense what makes the other person tick. Yeah, and I use my hands a lot. So when I speak now, obviously I use my hands. But even if we can't see each other tonight because I'm hiding behind a screen, I am really, really so grateful for having this opportunity and having even these few minutes tonight to share with you how much you all mean to me and to the rest of our community. And being able to share these sentiments, now we can take this forward into our community and how we work with people going forward. Because MyWealth is so much more than just an opportunity that we bring to people, but it's actually going to give them a place called home. Always say coming home is a very interesting concept to me. It's where you feel safe and loved. So that's my 2 cents worth tonight of how I experience relationships, how I appreciate my friends and you guys, and also for what we share here on this journey, on the mastermind. So thank you, guys. Thanks, Rich.
Thanks, Lizelle. It was good to hear from you. Len, I'm going to hand over to you. I know you've been saying a lot of things in the chat. Let's hear from you. Thank you.
Okay, Rich. I'd just like to say thank you to you and to Charles and to Doc Ant and Doc Michelle for all the teaching and training through the last few weeks and months, because when I joined MyWealth, I was sort of caught up in going to work and coming back, and you interact with your family and friends, but not really reaching out. And I've been on a journey of searching for my purpose for a long time now. And now that I've started moving out and seeing people, I changed very quickly from the first week or two trying to get people for my business. Now I'm actually totally focused on their needs. And I can't describe the excitement and the joy when I sit with people and share this opportunity, whether they get in or not. The fact of reaching out and forging new relationships has just brought a new joy and a passion into my life that I can't describe. So this whole thing about relationships really that's what life is about. And us finding who we are and reaching out to other people and changing the world it's been an amazing journey. And I really want to thank you guys for that. And yes, thank you.
Thanks, Len. Good to hear from you. I see we have a young man there who also wants to say something, sitting on his dad's lap. Great.
Johan, Willem, I saw your faces joining the faces. I'm looking forward to what you two are going to share with us.
Yeah, to touch on something that Richard said earlier in terms of relationships. In some cases, you need also to decide some people you need to cut out of your relationship, people that's not good influence, and that's not always sometimes easy to do. We had an interesting experience in our own extended family where we had to draw a line in some relationships because they were just too damaging to our core family. So that's also sometimes something to look at and see how healthy is the input of the other relationship into your life. Do you need to draw a line there? Do you need to set boundaries and stuff like that? Because in some cases, your disagreement and a hard relationship is a good thing because as long as there's growth. But if it brings destruction, then you need to draw a line. So let's agree to go our separate ways. So that's not something not easy to do, but that sometimes needs to be done for the health of your own relationships. There's something else also I want to comment on. Yeah, the other thing too that I've just seen in my work and so on is good relationships is how you treat the other person with respect and honor and dignity. And sometimes you have to show that for people to see that after a while. And people they do know that. I've seen it in my work too. People get back to me, or they just like to work with me because the way I treat them. So that's a very important thing in our relationships. Both people we know very well and new people we meet is always treat them with honor and respect.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's sometimes difficult, but when we see God in that person and look at them, one of I remember testing this for myself, and there was a guy down the road, and he had a tattoo on his face, and sort of like really sort of here and going sort of around his eyes, and you've got to now. And I'm the sort of person that wears my heart on the sleeve, so you can automatically see what I'm thinking. And I had to be very careful because it was a shock for me to look at this guy. And I tried to teach myself how to interact with this person. It's almost like looking at the person with a lazy eye, You've got to look at their eyes. You mustn't look at their face. And that's often what we got to do is we got to look at the person behind the facade. And when we can do that, we have a much more meaningful relationship instead of looking at the other stuff that we're so accustomed to seeing. We've got to try and understand the person. And, it's a challenge. It really is. Because it's easy to like the people who look like us, who do the things that we do. The challenge is, how do we grow and become and like the people that are different from us? Because that's what we're called to do ultimately. We're called to make a difference, and that's The difference is making a difference amongst the difference, not in the same people. So it's a challenge.
Yeah, that's something I try to teach my kids, is that every person you encounter that person is made in the image of God, and you need to treat them with that respect and that honor, and see them in that light.
Yeah.
I also want to add something that Willem and Richard both touch on, and that is, we always hear, if this relationship is not good for you, move it out. And I had to do that a couple of times in my life, where the person was well-meaning, okay, but what my opinion of the vision I had to live and their opinion of the vision I had to live was not the same. Okay, and that created conflict, and it's usually with good friends or good family members that occurs. And I had to purposefully distance myself from that relationship, but not giving up the relationship. I think this is important. So I no longer engaged in who I am with that person, but I maintained the relationship, although superficially the contact remained. So we didn't just say, "Oh, you're stupid, and I'm not going to talk to you again," and moved on, because that is not Christ-like. Although I must admit that's very tempting. And I think the key is to if you have a relationship like that, is not to just say I'm going to write off the relationship, but to still maintain the relationship, but engage less, and go do what you are called to do. And in the past, let's call it the past 6 months, I've been able to, many of those relationships that were at that level, to re-engage. And now that the vision has come to fruition, or it's starting to come to fruition, and it's actually visible. So I'm no longer just a nutty guy trying to be weird. There's actually fruit on the labor. And if you now engage with the relationship becomes actually much more valuable, because now they can buy in, now they can support, now they can still mean well, but now they can channel their good intentions in line with what you have seen or what you're busy doing, and then they become one of your big supporters. So I want to encourage you in that. It's not just to write off a relationship because it's not conductive to what you want to do now. Yes, you might want to withdraw from the relationship to a certain level, but still maintain it in essence. And when the time is right, whether it's years or months or days, doesn't matter, then you re-engage. And I think that is something we need to take note of, and not just say, this is not a relationship meant for me.
Shall totally agree with you there. We are also, as I mentioned, in our extended family, we had to draw a line, but there's never been a heart to write that off, and we're slowly starting to see that relationship starting to pick up and hopefully being restored. Yeah, but I totally agree with what you've said, definitely.
Awesome.
I think we do that, and it's easier to cut off because we don't like conflict. And what we should realize is that we actually need to communicate our likes and our dislikes. But we instead, because we're scared of conflict, we just withdraw, and then it's easier. That's the easy, the coward way to do it. You just cut off the person. But as Charles saying, what we need to do is actually communicate. So if we're upset with something, we don't just walk away from it. There's no love in walking away from something. But when you can actually communicate your dissatisfaction or whatever the problem is, that's when we're actually growing in relationships. Walking away from relationships we're not growing in relationships. And that's the challenge that we need to say, well, yes, some things are not working the way they should do at the moment, but walking away from it's not going to help us, because all we're going to actually do is find another person that's the same, who's going to challenge us on the same level, just going to be a different person. So we're never going to learn. And what we need to do is say, right, what is the actual problem? And let's communicate that clearly to the person. And then say, well, if we can't resolve this, then then I'm going to distance myself from you. But state your intention, because often when we do that, it shakes the person, or they realize that, but you've never told me you don't like this, because that's the truth. We often never have told the person anything because we're scared of conflict, because we're scared of that rejection that will come if we tell them what we think. Meanwhile, we're not happy in the relationship. So in love, we should communicate the dissatisfaction, the problem, so that we can actually get some feedback to look at, because we're all guilty of that. It's easier to walk away. Simple. Johanna, you there with us?
Hallo. Kan julle my hoor?
Ons kan, ja.
Die generator loop 'n bietjie hier agter. Okay guys, sorry, I just thought a short story that I can share, that we are called to make a difference. I think when we look at the parable that Jesus taught about the robbers who took a man down on the road and just left him there, and the Levi and the priest who came by and just walk around him, and then a Samaritan making a difference. If from the perspective of relationships, you can see that the robbers, their intention was only what you have belongs to me. I want to get my hands on that. And they want to grab from you and are not interested in you, your wealth, your well-being, whatever. So that's a choice by which we can live. The other one is like people who are focused only on themselves and their interests. Their success is their own priorities, what they are focused on. So the priest and the Levi, they had other things to do and other things on their minds, and they didn't see the poor guy who has been robbed in his circumstances, in his need. And then the Samaritan, he had more a relational approach over borders, being a Samaritan, not a Jew. He saw what the guy needed and he reached out to him. So his approach in that relationship was, I acknowledge you as a person. I identify with your need. I know I'm here for a reason. I can make a difference. What I have, I'm gladly sharing with you. And it just reminded me when you guys talking about the relationships, the focus in a relationship is not you. You have to your heart and eyes and ears open if we want to impact and have a meaningful contribution and make a difference. That's all I want to say.
Ander Johan, ek het gesien jy het ook 'n video geanseer. So as jy iets om te deel, is jy welkom.
Hallo Shaul, ja, ek sit en wag vir Rich om my te verskoon. Ja, ek kan maar deur 'n moeilike tydjie en ek val in daai kategorie where I have to make a decision on exactly what we were talking about earlier, where you have to get to the point of making that final decision to cut out from a relationship that's not working for you. And what I've realized in the meantime was that it's been holding me back in a big way. So hopefully I will be able to get back to you guys in a week or two and report back on the positive changes that it has brought me. But being part of this group helped me a lot. And I think the penny dropped again tonight that what I need to do and what I'm doing now at the moment is the right thing. Thank you very much for that. And thanks for sharing.
Thanks, John. And if you need to be excused, you can be excused now. And thanks for sharing.
Thank you. I was waiting for you. Exactly. Have a good night, everybody.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you, Johan. Appreciate it. Thanks for sharing. I think it's been an hour and a half. Rich, if you're happy, I think we can wind it up.
Yes, thank you, Charles. And I think that Doc Anthony actually mentioned that how this group evolved and how we've come together. And then we hear things that was telling us, and how, you know, the fantastic vision of MyWealth. And I can just see us growing as a family and having that support and knowing each other through meetings like this and through the through the summits and all those sort of things. I look forward to the future. I look forward to everyone's journey that we're going to experience. So thank you so much for being part of this. Thank you, Charles, for allowing us to do this. And it's just been an absolute privilege. And I look forward to the next couple of weeks of the mastermind and then further on from there. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful week. Make some notes. That what I told you earlier about where you are and what you think about your finances and your money today, and then put that over what Charles has just sort of alluded to. And then imagine how your story is going to change around your wealth in the coming years. So write that down, where you're at the moment and what your thinking is. No one else is going to read it. You're going to read it for yourself, but it's going to become so important in the future. It'll be a story that you can tell to yourself, if no one else. So thank you so much.
Rich, allow me just to pop in a last second and just to thank you on behalf of everybody. I think, it's leading by example, and we certainly cherish the time you make available for us to grow. And I want to agree with you that I really feel a sense of people connecting and coming to the fore and contributing. And I just want to say to all the participants tonight, guys, when you contribute, we learn. Doesn't matter whether you believe that you don't have the experience. I can tell you that you don't even know how you're being utilized for everybody to learn whenever you contribute. So may I thank you and encourage all of you to be ready to contribute. Thank you for making this worth our while. Good night, everybody.
Good night, again. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Cheers.
I think the only thing I wish I could teach this at schools for the kids as well. You know how important it is. Every little nugget will grow the youngsters, our new generation. You know,
it's on its way.
Yeah. So I'm like, what's it? One subject, life skills. That's a waste of time. And if they could incorporate education like this to the youngsters now already, I think we would have 10 times a brighter future.
Well, Chris, this is all about discipleship, really, and it's each one teach one who's been taught by one. And I certainly hope that what we learn here, that we are going to take further. It's not just going to be a 10-week journey, but you're going to take this to your children, your community, and all that's because there's so many valuable things, even if it's just listening to people.
Yeah. So true. So true. Yeah. Anyway, guys, have a great evening.
You too. Thanks, Chris.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Good night, Willem.
Night.
Sean, you're up for a call later?
Let's call now. I haven't even gotten to my emails the past 2 days. It's been rough. So
I know. No, I'll chat to you in the morning. It's not that urgent.
No, call me now. Otherwise, you're not going to get me tomorrow.
Okay. Once everybody's going to. Okay. I'll call you in like 10 minutes.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Ta-ta. Nie od tata, waar verder. Waar verder. Tata. I say.
Say bye, sweetie.
I don't care, sweeties, nie?
Say bye, sweetie.
Ja.
Oh, sweetie.
Okay, dan of je iets reelt.
Mama is wit.